Hello, welcome to Where I Fit in the Story. Today I'll be interviewing my mother. Say hello.
Hello.
Alright, let's get this started. Where does our family come from?
Well, that's a really good question. We have a very diverse background. On my father's side, there he was born in North Carolina and has a very, I wouldn't say complex, but very diverse, as I said, background. My mother is from South Korea. And so, if you'd like, I can talk a little bit about my mom and I can talk a little bit about my dad's family.
That'd be great.
Well, let's see. My mother was born in Chunju, South Korea, in 1942. She's passed away. She has been gone for 14 years, but I'll share with you the information that I do know that I grew up hearing from her about her family as much as I can. She was the only daughter in a family of 4 brothers, and her brothers' names were, the youngest one was Togyu, then there was Chungyu, and Mungyu, and Taegyu, and of course your grandmother, Kyuyo, and I gave you her name. You knew her as Harmony, which is the Korean name for, or the Korean word, for grandmother. As far as how many generations I can trace back, my mother didn't talk a lot about her grandparents. She mostly talked about her parents, which would have been my grandparents, because I think that a lot happened in her past and in her family's past with the Japanese occupation of Korea, and when the country divided into 2 between North and South, and she lost a lot of family members, and of course a lot of family members were left in the North that couldn't come back over. So most of the stories that she told me over the years had to do with her mom and her dad and her siblings, and after her parents passed away, how she had to take care of her siblings, and just the overall change, of Korea from when she was smaller to as she got older. Let's see. Places of birth. Well, all of the siblings were born in Chunju, but they did move when my mother got older and became an adult to Seoul, and that's where she met my dad. My father was working for the Red Cross and met my mom through some friends, and my mother was working in an office, and they fell in love, and that's all she wrote. But unfortunately, all of her siblings have passed on, and as I said, your Harmony passed away 14 years ago, so I do have a lot of family in South Korea. You have a lot of family in South Korea. Many, 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 many cousins, and I hope to be able to go there with you very soon so you can meet everyone. Let's see, the next question.
Do we have any veterans?
Well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about my dad's side of the family. My dad was born, as I said, in North Carolina, and he grew up in a family of 7 children, and that included 2 sisters and 5 boys, including him. And they grew up on a farm. And when I say that his family is very diverse, that's because we have Tuscaroran Indian heritage in our family, as well as African American. And over the years, my father has told me stories of how things were back in the 40s and the 50s with segregation and, unfortunately, hatred and so many things that we still see today that occurred 50, 60 years ago. He is still here. He is 73 years old. He grew up and moved on to move up north and got married and became a very well-noted biomedical engineer and research scientist, and retired about 20 years ago. And he hopes that one day you become a scientist as well. He is a veteran. Pardon me, I'm sorry I didn't answer the question initially.
No, it's fine.
He is a veteran. He was in the Army and then the National Guard Reserve. But I don't believe any of his siblings were in the military. However, on the other side, on my mom's family, all of her brothers had to go into the military in Korea, and so all of them served. Even her youngest brother served in the military.
Do you have any stories?
Do I have any stories about our family? Well, the stories that my mother would tell as I was growing up, I think were more to teach a lesson when I would do something that required a story to remind me. Oftentimes about how she grew up poor and had to sacrifice finishing high school in order to be able to go to work and send her brothers to school, because school is not and was not at the time free. So she had to send them to school and work because her parents had passed away. When my mother came to the United States, one of the things that she was determined to do was to finish school and get a degree, and worked very hard, and that's one of the reasons why I always emphasize to you that you need to work really hard, and that nothing comes easy. And so I don't really have a lot of specific stories to talk about, because as I said, most of them were to teach a lesson as I was growing up. My dad often talks about how things were growing up as far as the political climate, how things were at school, what was accessible, what wasn't. Being a minority in the 50s and 60s in the South was very hard. And it didn't matter what shade you were or what your background makeup was. Unfortunately, there was just a lot of racism, and he has talked about that and how he had to prevail. And so I don't really have a lot of specific stories about that. Now, on your father's side, if we want to throw a little bit in there about your dad, his family also, on his dad and his mom's side, both grew up in North Carolina, and they have lots of stories. And he used to lovingly talk about his grandmother and how much he loved her, and all the wonderful stories of how she used to love to cook and how everybody loved to come to her house, and she would never turn anybody away. She always had a slice of cake for someone. Just very loving stories. But not one stands out to me. It's just a general feeling of when I think about certain people in our family, and even in your dad's family, it's a good feeling.
Do you have any genealogical records? If so, where are they?
I have a copy of my mother's family record that my uncle created before he passed away. And so I do have a copy of that. My father's genealogical record is in Clinton at my grandmother's house. And it has all of her family listed, as well as my grandfather's family and his parents and in-laws, and of course all of my aunts and uncles listed. So that's in Clinton.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to give you just a snippet, a tiny bird's eye view on our family. Of course, there's a lot more to talk about, but our time is limited, so I hope you do well with this project.